So we're here with Keith Topar of Catalyst Music and Healing Arts. Um, Keith, how about you introduce yourself to us, tell you about your role here at Catalyst?
Sure. My name is Keith. I currently live in Grass Valley, California. I'm a musician uh, by design, guitarist, bass player, a vocalist as well. And I'm also a practitioner of Ayurvedic medicine and herbalism, Western herbalism and Chinese herbalism.
Oh, wow.
And my role at Catalyst is sort of an advisor to the wellness center and the burgeoning wellness community that is the vision of Catalyst, as well as an enthusiast who is both a musician and a person interested in healing.
So, what is your, you listed off many instruments there and musical talents, but where did your background and journey begin in the musical realm?
Probably before I was aware of when it began, but when I was very, very young, I loved picking up on patterns, and eventually I started playing. I pestered my parents to get a piano when I was a kid, so I just played around on the piano and would play Beatles songs and theme songs from television shows and come up with little musical ideas. And eventually, when computers came around in the mid 90s, I started recording things with a program called Cakewalk, which is it goes back a way. I don't think there's any leftovers from Cakewalk now, but it turned into what GarageBand eventually became. And around that time, I wanted to take up an instrument in school, so I wanted to take up the saxophone, but the trick was you couldn't take up band instruments until fifth grade,
Oh,
whereas in fourth grade, you could take up orchestral instruments. And I wasn't that interested in orchestral instruments, but I was more interested in playing anything than nothing or having to wait a year, which is might as well have been 10 years when I was in fourth grade. So I took up what I wanted to be the cello, but they told me, well, we need bass players. So I took up the upright bass for a few years, and that led me to electric bass, which led me to guitar, and uh, and so that's kind of how it all started. And then I ended up going to music school at Berklee College of Music for 4 years with a jazz composition major and professional music. I think is my actual major.
wow, that's quite a journey there. So I also know that you are you also play the harmonium. Am I right about that? And
I do.
you're into
Yeah,
kirtan music as well?
yeah, devotional music, kirtan music. Um, I don't consider that any great achievement, but having spent a long time in spiritual community, which in many ways is it's certainly how me and Brian met one another, but it's also, uh, I think, a reason that he reached out to me some years ago in his dream of building and giving birth to Catalyst. He knows of my background in living in community as well. But while I was living at this community in the Santa Cruz, California mountains called Mount Madonna Center, I learned how to play harmonium in the context of um, performances, or rather adornments to the services that took place at the temple there, Hindu temple.
Mhm.
And so harmonium is a little piano with a little squeeze box. So it's not too challenging, and the bigger challenge is how to make it sound elegant and delicate because it's a rather simple instrument.
So, at Mount Madonna, was that where your holistic journey kind of started, or did it take place earlier than that? I know you met Brian there.
Mm,
That's where your relationship started there.
yeah, I would say my holistic journey probably started in my mid 20s, which was prior to Mount Madonna Center, and I was studying Western herbalism and eventually Chinese medicine in Boston and Watertown, Massachusetts. And when I moved to California a few years later, I continued my study of both of those subjects, but I eventually was led to Mount Madonna, sort of through or under under the impetus of wanting to study Ayurvedic medicine, Indian medicine. And so when I arrived at Mount Madonna, I didn't abandon my Chinese and Western roots, but I more formally began a study that has been about 5 years of formal education in Ayurvedic medicine and have since become certified in that field. And that is my main field. That is how I guess, advertise myself. But I use my other holistic backgrounds certainly to inform my treatment plans for clients.
So, in taking your holistic background and, of course, your extensive music, do you ever fuse the two?
Not in an overt way, not in a musical therapy sort of way, which I've always felt isn't as I would say isn't as necessary as a field of study, music therapy, because music is therapy whether you like it or not.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really take a deep study of music therapy to know that it is therapy. It really just offers a person, uh, I guess, a medium to utilize music as a therapeutic tool. I often will recommend certain musical performances or musical tracks for clients to assist in their healing journey, especially when it comes to helping to inform their practice of how to breathe or how to operate their consciousness. I'll often give pieces of music that sort of draw the client or the listener into an experience that is sort of unavoidably in tune.
Mhm.
And with Brian and with the Catalyst meetings that we've engaged in, I'll often use language that it's difficult to tell whether I'm talking about musical harmony and being in tune or emotional and physical wellness, because I think of them as being very, very similar. So I've never directly fused the two, but certainly they overlap no matter what I do.
And you mentioned going through different tracks depending on what kind of problem someone is facing. What kind of example would that be?
Well, what I mean is occasionally I'll be sitting with a client and I'll have in my mind a pathogenesis or an etiology or a framework of understanding a person's imbalance from the Chinese perspective, Chinese medicinal perspective, and immediately an herbal formula or an acupuncture point or series of acupuncture points or other therapies that are in the Chinese idiom will present themselves to my consciousness.
Mhm.
And if the client is open to whatever I comes to me, then I will suggest or recommend these in their treatment plan. But other times I'll be thinking of Western herbal products or substances. Other times, and most of the time, I'm thinking of Ayurvedic therapies, Ayurvedic treatments, and the Ayurvedic paradigm of how disease emerges and imbalance can be reverse engineered. So I'd say all of them sort of intertwine, but occasionally I'm with clients who want Ayurveda because they've never had it. Other clients just want uh, to rediscover their balance, and it doesn't matter if I give them True Solomon seal or ashwagandha or Panax ginseng. Doesn't matter.
So with these holistic practices and a Catalyst's mission to help musicians, how do you think that the atmosphere and the offerings that we are putting together, how are they going to benefit those that might not know about the benefits?
In the holistic wellness arena,
Mhm.
well, I consider a place like Catalyst to be a place where a person comes because they know it feels good. They've heard good things. They know that they want what it is advertising.
Right.
And the entire experience of being there is one of rediscovering that inner harmony and that sense uh, of perfect pitch, so to speak, or tunedness. And a person who steps onto the land will be healed by being in this frequency, to use the term sort of loosely, or being in a part of a rhythm where there is a sort of a quiet time in the evening where it's removed from the hustle and bustle of where perhaps they might have come from, this person might have come from. There are healing modalities that assist in that unfolding, just as there are the great framework of this place will assist in that just by the nature of its design and the nature of its pattern. So I think that people who are uninformed or unexperienced with holistic paradigms will recognize that the entirety of the Catalyst enterprise is the macrocosmic expression of what it's like to participate in something that is in tune, and stepping into the wellness center proper, the part of the Catalyst enterprise that is the wellness center, will just be the microcosmic tuning of that individual's um, specifics. And so I don't think it'll be any great shift from the experience of being a catalyst as a whole.
I would agree. And what kind of workshops and classes can visitors expect to see you at? You mentioned your Chinese and Ayurvedic is practices. So, what kind of offering and services will they be able to maybe see you at?
I think one of the greatest strengths of Ayurvedic medicine, particularly, is being able to sit with a client and offer them insight into what it's like to live in a balanced way for this specific human being. I often say it's like finding the user's manual of what it's like to be this person, and having a one-on-one consultation that informs the client as to dietary choices and lifestyle choices, as well as substantive additions or subtractions, herbs that can be added, or uh, things, food, substances that can be limited or avoided in a person's inner ecosystem. This understanding and this awareness, as well as a treatment plan spelled out for the person, gives them uh, an opportunity to explore a life that is living according to their user's manual, um, as well as direct therapies that have to do with um, fulfilling the agenda of the Ayurvedic paradigm.
Mhm.
So, if a person is out of balance, there are certain therapies, both physical, emotional, and otherwise, that are recommended. And so, ancillary to the Ayurvedic conversation with a client, there might be recommendations from the Ayurvedic practitioner for specific applications of massage or acupuncture, or other therapies, other physical therapies, which include oil massage. And hopefully, there'll be an opportunity at Catalyst to have some of these greater, uh, not greater, but more, perhaps more elaborate therapies, which include application of a constant presentation of oil dripped on the forehead while the client is in a supine position, which can be immensely helpful for dispersing any collection of active thoughts in the mind, as well as education in both yoga and pranayama, which is a form of yogic breathing. And I think yoga, we could call it yoga therapy holistically overall. So I think those are the types of offerings I foresee being available for people attending Catalyst.
A lot to look forward to, definitely. How can you, just in my own interest, the you mentioned the oil or water dripping on the floor. How does that, um, help focus the mind?
Mm. Well, the term is shirodhara, and the word dhara means to be constant and uniform and even and still. And the application of warm, either medicated oil or just warm, perhaps sesame oil, um, that is in a constant stream on the forehead, gathers of the awareness to that specific center and doesn't allow for any other activity to exist inside of the emotional and mental sphere. There's only one thing happening at that moment, and this is all there is. And that can be immensely healing in itself. And when it's performed on a client for the requisite amount of time, client dependent, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, the client is left in a state where I almost think of it, to use a musical example, like a resonant frequency. When your guitar is in tune and you play an A on the G string, the A string will vibrate.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden, the A on your G string is more resonant than it would have been were your guitar slightly out of tune, or were there some dampening or muting or friction-like space on the instrument. And so when this mind starts to focus not on what it shouldn't be focused on, but on one specific thing, all of a sudden there is this responsible use of the mind that allows for a lot of balance to trickle through the rest of the being. And it's an incredibly rewarding and healing experience.
It's almost like a whole body harmony from that one focus
Indeed.
point.
Yeah, whole body harmony. I like that.
So thank you for your time. I don't want to take too much of it. I know you're got a lot of things to do today. But if you want to say where people can find you, maybe any social media or such.
I wish. I'm currently working on a website which tentatively is my full name, which is KEITHTOPAR.com, KeithTopar.com. Although that web address might change, but I hope people who are led to that website will be led to the correct website eventually. Otherwise, I am on Facebook under that name, and I can be reached that way.
Right. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Miguel. It's been a pleasure.